You got one last.
I didn't want to, did I?
Nope, you're good.
Sitting in.
Thinking it had been.
Well, we run over, it's easy, it's a quick escape.
It's a quick escape. Yes, you got your right
Okay.
back.
Okay, you're good.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting of the Monroe County Animal Management Commission meeting to order. On our agenda tonight, we first have the approval of our minutes. That will be followed by our new business, which is a request to declare potentially dangerous a dog owned by the Hobbs. Then we have a request to declare potentially dangerous an animal or animals owned by Dennison, and then habitual offender declaration for Dennison. After that, we'll follow our reports and discussions, and then we'll end the evening. So we'll start with approval of the July 1st, 2024 minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second on the
You can
table.
take it
Do we
all second.
have any
We
discussion?
had a third.
fantastic.
Who cares?
All right. No discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. All right, so we'll start with our first order of business, which is the request to declare potentially dangerous Hobbs. For these different declarations, what we'll do is we'll have the officer in charge of the case come forward first, present the case to the commission, after which we will have the owner of the dog come to the table and present what happened. And then if there's any victims or other witnesses, we can have them come up forward. We ask that you just keep your time to 5 minutes or less. So officer for the Hobbs case.
I got it here, but I'll read it off from there if you want.
Oh, okay.
I hate how these run out. It's crazy. Okay, so on July 9th, I had received an email from Deputy Worthington with the sheriff's office advising that he had responded to a dog bite at 3875 West DeLapp Road. The bite took place off the owner's property. Young lady was jogging and the dog came off the property and bit her on the arm and on her thigh. Made contact with them. The victim, they provided pictures of the injuries, which I provided to the commission, so you guys could see that. Did speak with Mr. Hobbs. He provided up-to-date rabies vaccinations for the dog. The dog was quarantined at home and completed without issues. As far as other instances with the dogs, there was a bite that took place, but it was not reported to our office. And a second incident had occurred. A police report was done on it, but it doesn't appear that it was submitted to our division. So we didn't have any record of it in our division, but the sheriff's department did respond and a report was done. The dog had gotten off property and chased another jogger, but did not bite or anything like that. And this being the third incident, second one that was reported to us where a dog did bite a jogger, leaving injuries.
So we had reportedly two priors, one that was,
One that was not reported, one that was reported to the sheriff's office, but didn't seem to make it to our division, so we weren't aware of it. The victims had reported that there was another incident, so we dug through our sheriff's department side of systems that we use and did find the report where the dog had chased another jogger but didn't make any contact with them. And then this incident was reported directly to us through another sheriff's deputy.
By the photos I'm looking, I'm seeing massive bruising.
I don't believe there's any punctures in the bruising.
Yeah, I can see, not that I can see, and then I see.
One small puncture on the wrist, kind of
Wrist,
forearm
okay.
area there. Yeah, I don't know what kind of jogging stuff she had on, but that's pretty impressive to have that much pressure and not have
Mhm.
a puncture. May want to invest in that company for sure.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for the officer?
I don't want to sound like I'm obsessed on the priors, but the priors, when did they occur? Do you know?
Not right off the top of my head, I'm not sure. The only thing I put in my report was a case number. That it may be attached in there next to the case so it would be a sheriff's department case number. It would be an M number that's in the report.
Is that the,
There may be a date that's next to the case
Number
number.
24 is probably this year.
Yeah,
I have our secondary program.
I believe it was 5 something of this year.
Okay,
Yeah, it says M24 10357.
I'm not sure what the last 4 mean.
10357.
Yeah, 10357.
That report was generated May 4th, 2024, 7:51 PM.
And that was for the chasing of the other jogger, but no contact with me.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have the owners of Loki, Terry and Jerry, would you like to step up and tell us what?
I'm fine right here, if you want me up there.
We need you up here. Yep, we sure do. We don't bite, we promise.
But they say my dog does, so, you know, who knows?
So, we have before the bite incident, the request from the sheriff's department declaring your dog potentially dangerous or dangerous. So do you have anything?
Well, they say that it chased a jogger.
Mhm.
It did not leave the property. The officer come that evening. I'm not for sure what his name is.
Deputy Worthington.
I don't remember the name. He come out and he talked about it. And I said, the dog did not leave the property. He thought the dogs were going to leave the property. I found out who it was by accident and I asked him. He says, no, the dogs did not leave your property. They were running, but they do run along our property line. And they bark and carry on. The dogs fight between themselves, they're brothers. But, and I said, what happened? He said, well, I was jogging by and I thought they were going to leave the property. I said, did they? And they said, no. And it's Bill Oliver's son that owned Oliver Winery.
Okay. And so this current case then where the dog did bite, were you present?
We just got home and was back in our boat in the driveway. And I didn't see her and we let the dogs out and they've been cooped up for 7-8 hours. And evidently they come out and they're big dogs and they get excited. You know, I mean, I don't know if it bit her. I mean, I seen at the point in time, I didn't see any puncture wounds or anything. And we got a call a couple of days later from animal control about keep the dog, you know. Yeah, so it was, you know, and then later that Friday, I got a thing in the mail saying that the dog was vicious or whatever you guys say, or whatever's deemed in your paperwork. So I tried calling to find out, and finally the officer that come out that night, was a few days later, called me and said that she had bruises. So
How did, if the jogger was on a sidewalk or the street, I don't know your name.
I live out in the country.
Okay, and you let your dogs out,
Mhm.
how did your dogs get to the jogger? I mean, don't you have a fence, right?
It's an invisible fence. It's not a above ground fence. It's an invisible fence. I will say once in a while, if deer run through the yard, they will cross it after the deer, that they get 10, 15 feet out, they turn around and come back.
So if there's something that they want to pursue, they'll go get them.
They will,
No fence.
they hardly ever leave the property. I mean, it's just rare that they do. And the times that the jogger said it left, or it ran down through there, it was on our side of the road. And evidently, she was on that side of the road, walking the property, not on the property line, but walking at the edge of the road.
Right.
And evidently, I mean, we're like, I'm gonna guess 8 feet from the edge of pavement.
And dogs don't know property lines from anything, they know the territories.
If our invisible fence is roughly 8 feet from the edge of pavement.
Have they run through the fence before, because there's different settings on an
They,
invisible
it's the
fence.
highest setting on them. The one dog refuses. He gets close to the fence. The one dog, Loki, that is in question, he will get between the fence and the other dog and try to keep him from getting shot. The other dog bites at the fence. I mean, he gets shot or hears the beat. He bites at the ground, carries on. And the dogs are big dogs. They are rough with themselves. I ain't gonna say they're not rough because they play hard. They never stop running. They hardly ever lay down. But if people walk up and down the road and they step in the yard and pet them. I mean, I don't know, I know their last name is Strange, but, and it lives between us and the lady that called the sheriff. The aunt from the victim.
Sure. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh,
bring it
sorry.
to us.
And you're Terry?
Yes,
That's right.
Fluffy is actually mine. When this incident happened, I immediately went to the person and we spoke to them. We asked them if they need to go to the hospital. Oh, no, I'm okay. She goes, they were just doing their job. They're protecting their property. She goes, I understand. She goes, I had a great Pyrenees that, protected its property also. And I said, well, we don't mind. And Jerry had said, we'll take you wherever you need to go. She goes, no, she goes, I'm not going to be one of those crazy people that call the police and report it. It is what it is. It happened. She says, I'm okay. And that night, her aunt kept driving back and forth in front of our house. And I was in the garden one time and I just happened to look up and she went. I turned around and I walked back in my house. They came by again. Next thing we know, we look up, they go by again and sat there at the victim's house, I assume, because they lived like this. And as soon as the sheriff entered our driveway, there they go again. So they're sitting there watching my house, which made me very uncomfortable in my own house, that they're sitting there watching, and she made that, it was a very mean gesture. We did not mean for this to happen at all. And my dog, our dogs, we have drain kids. My one granddaughter that lives in town, she plays with them since she was 2. Because she's 6 now and the dogs are 4. She was 2 years old. She has been playing with these dogs. Never once have they ever tried or acted like. Loki is the protective one of the house and Ruger is a protective one of the vets. Because he will get in front of me and take me wherever he wants me to go. Not mean, he's hurting me, basically. But we offered and we did all the steps that we should have done when this accident happened. If there was a problem, after she told us, after she told us there wasn't, why did she not come back to us? We were nice enough that we stopped and talked to her, make sure she was okay. But then to turn around and have sheriff show up. We knew something was going on by them driving back and forth in front of our house.
And so what we're here to decide this evening, is whether the sheriff's department has requested that we consider declaring the dog potentially dangerous or dangerous based on this instance. And so our job as commission is to look according to the ordinance and our definitions, whether that animal fits that definition, as a potentially dangerous or dangerous. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you can have potentially dangerous or dangerous dog, that's great with your family. Our concern is with the public using that roadway. So that's how we're making our decision.
Right. If you pull in my driveway or Mr. Ellis pulls in my driveway and you open up the door and say, come on, let's go, they're gonna get in and leave with you. I mean,
I mean, if you're.
and but like I said, the neighbor that lives between us and the aunt live across the road, they walk all the time. And they walk in the yard and pet them, give them a treat or something. The Hilly Hunter went by our house this year. And all the bicycle riders, you know, they never got out of the yard. We sit out and watched them to see how they would act with all the bicycle riders.
Because that had never happened since we had them,
Mhm.
But
you know.
May I ask,
Sure.
Loki, is Loki intact or has been fixed?
No, they're, both of them have been fixed.
Okay, and what about microchips?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
They have had all of that, and I mean, I can provide that.
As River was pointing out, we're being asked to consider whether, I think it's just Loki. So it's only.
Loki's the one.
Yeah,
Whether Loki should be, whether he fits the definition of potentially dangerous or dangerous. And if he does, there are some things you have to do. We're not taking the dog away from you. There's some things you got to do to make certain that Loki is not in that situation again, where he can interact with somebody and cause them injury or possibly.
We
something worse.
put an extra shock collar on him now.
But there might be things like, that there may be a requirement for an outdoor enclosure if he's outside, but we're not gonna take him away from him. Microchipping and being neutered would have been a
Two of the
requirement.
requirements, so you'll worry that too, no matter what.
So,
I mean, everything we have has been, even our raccoons and.
Yeah.
Neutered.
so can I ask, so you guys are going to make an assumption on our dog without seeing it related to it? Based on,
It's based on the investigation.
It's-
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've not seen any pictures
Would you like some?
or any, you know,
yeah, I think I'll give you my copy. This is the,
I just like to see them. I mean, I'm not doubting it.
yeah, you can have that. That's my copy, but that's public record. And that just
The
shows.
pictures are on the
pictures of the backside.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions?
No,
Okay,
this
so-
one.
Yes, sir.
Heard you giving them the backstory of Loki and how it interacts with your family and all that stuff. It seems like it's out of the norm. Was there any type of aggravating factors in this instance that would?
I think
The only-
what, go
I think
ahead.
the only thing that when the jogger was on our side of the road, or county side of the road, instead of like they're facing the traffic coming at them, which most joggers do, was on that side. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it was thinking it was going to get on our property to do something. I have no idea.
Well, like she said, he
I don't
could
know.
potentially have been,
And if she was on the edge of the road or thought it was gonna give you something, I don't know. If I was a dog, I would try to tell you, but I
if
can't
he
answer
was
that.
vicious, would he not have been the skin broken and, I don't know, I've never,
It's hard to say.
it's
And
never,
there's different varying levels, and that's the reason why we asked about the number of puncture wounds, because some of our decisions are based on that.
okay,
So how far off the property did this take place? How far was?
right on the edge of
Like,
the road.
this is.
We don't
if this-
really know.
If this was a county road.
Right.
It was right alongside of it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't see her. But whenever I jumped out of the truck and ran around, it
She
was like,
was on our
it,
side.
it was standing within 2 feet of the edge of pavement.
Okay.
I would refer to the edge of pavement. That's
On
what
the
we do.
pavement or on the side?
Off from the edge of the
Right.
pavement into the pavement. You know
We
what I'm
never
saying?
left our yard.
It,
Okay, okay.
That we know, that we saw,
that she was, when I got there, she was a couple feet into the road.
So she was on the pavement.
She's on the
Okay,
pavement
okay.
and our fence is roughly 6, 8 feet
On the
from,
pavement.
yes.
Okay, we're not there, I'm not accusing, we're trying to get a picture in our mind.
We tried to,
where it
I put the
was.
fence in
Yeah.
from the center line, basically what the county maintains. You know, I mean, they got me on so much from the center line of the road. So, well, you deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
Great,
Cool.
thank you.
All right, thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Then we had a rebuttal after this, after they talked and we want to say
Yeah,
something.
if we have
Okay,
questions and
thank you.
everything too.
thank you.
All right. Emily, would you like to, or members, if you are welcome to come on up.
So I'm just gonna kind of bounce off of a few things that I've heard first.
One moment.
Yeah.
Who's who? We don't know.
Perfect, this time.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm assuming based on Google Maps, this is their house. I was walking on, they're correct, on the side of the road that is closest to their house. I never got into the grass that was close to their property or on their property whatsoever. And then the dog came at me and chased me, and then it grabbed my arm, and then obviously I was running across the road, and then it grabbed my sweatshirt that was tied around my waist, and then it also grabbed my leg. By the time it grabbed my leg, I was in the trees on the opposite side of the road because obviously I was very scared. So at that point, that was when they called the dogs and had them come to them, and then we did talk. So if a jogger is running on the side of the road, I don't see how, if they attack someone, they could not have left the fence. Excited is a word that's usually associated with positive emotions, not attacking. And then also when you pet dogs, usually with whatever dog, you are familiar with their dog. So I'm not there and I don't observe their dogs, but you know, typically if friends and family or people who are with the dog very often, those are the types of people who the dog would be okay with petting. You know, I am not around the dog, so obviously that would not have been an appropriate situation for me to pet the dog, and that's kind of evident based on what happened. I want to just put it on the record. I never said that I wouldn't call the police or anything. The statement that I did say is I do not personally plan on pressing charges.
Maybe actually clarify something. It sounds like this is not a court of law.
Yes.
Okay, we're basically, we're not here to determine beyond reasonable doubt whether something did or did not happen.
Mhm.
We're mostly civilian members of the community up here, appointed by the county commission, with a few ringers that are the sheriff's department in Ellisville and you know. But we're basically looking at the incident, not the talking that happened, but
Yeah.
basically the interaction that you had with the dogs, where it happened, and then how county code defines potentially dangerous and
And
dangerous,
yes.
you know? And our job is basically did what happened. Would you guys mind if I read the definition of potentially dangerous? Would that be helpful?
Yes, that'd-
for everybody?
yes.
Okay. Potentially dangerous means any animal while off the property owned, lawfully occupied or controlled by the owner, guardian, or keeper of the animal, does one of two things. Number one, causes injury to a person from a single unjustified bite with no punctures deeper than half a tooth and with little or no bruising or abrasions, or when unjustified causes severe injury, and there's a definition for severe injury, or causes injuries leading to the death of a domestic pet or livestock. And if the circumstances are egregious, the commission may determine that the animal may be dangerous. A dangerous animal is off the property owned or occupied by the owner or guardian, causes an unjustified single bite with one deep puncture to a person. Or number 2 is pet domestic livestock. And number 3 is where the situation or injuries are particularly egregious, like ripping off a finger or I could make up stuff. So, and all we're here to determine is whether the interaction between the jogger and the dog fits the definition of one of these 2 terms. The sheriff's department, we're not here to fine anybody. We're not here to find anybody guilty. The sheriff's department has seen the incident and is asking us, hey, this might rise to potentially dangerous or dangerous. And if it does, the courts and the county commission have given us the authority to make that determination. And there are specific remedies that the owner of the dog are required to do to keep this from happening in the future. Okay. Like possibly keeping the dog indoors, having one on the muzzle. We're not considered vicious, but there are some things like that, neutering, that kind of stuff. But that's the limit of the scope of this entire hearing.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. You know, we're not looking to cast guilt or remove dogs from ownership.
Yeah.
You know, we're not doing any of that stuff tonight. You know, all we're looking at is what happened and did the dog's behavior satisfy these definitions that the county has set up, that everybody in the county that owns a dog is required to have their dog not do. That's all we're doing. Is did the dog do this? And if so, what limited things can we require of the owners to make sure it doesn't happen again? Your injuries, you certainly can go to court and have civil, you know, all that stuff. Those are, but we're only talking about the dog and whether the dog, through his actions or her actions, satisfy these requirements. And as a result, the owners have to do something to maintain that dog. That's it. So just so everybody's, so, cool. I'm all over.
Okay, I don't know what pictures you have of the injuries, but we brought, they have these, okay, all right. So I don't know if this type of thing has happened with the dog before. I'm assuming not. I just find it a little unnerving that there has been 3 incidents, even though one was unreported now, and there's kind of been, in my view, no restrictions or anything, seeing that the dog has bitten before. Yes. It's chased joggers. It attempted to bite me 3 times, only made contact twice. And the dog's not kept safe from passing cars, seeing that I live down the road that's constantly coming at my car. I know there's been multiple times where it's gotten actually out in the road and I've had to swerve to not hit the dog. And I just personally don't feel like community members are safe to walk or jog or bike or any of that stuff, especially kids, because that's even more severe than this. If it were to happen to a kid, I just don't think it's safe, personally.
And if that is the case, please help us by, if you're swerving to avoid the dog on the road, let somebody in law enforcement know.
Okay.
Okay, so that if it is an animal management, the sheriff's department will pass it off to animal management and they can add it to their files. There were 3 priors, but animal management is only aware of one of them.
Yes.
One of them they found, and there's a 3rd one in the sheriff's files, but these were all, you know, it's you know, they're trying to do the best we can.
Exactly.
But having help from the community to help us help the community
It's
in
crucial.
situations, crucial. So, right.
Again, I just wanted to echo, the electric fence doesn't work. The dogs, ever since they've been there, once they've gotten past their puppy stage physically, you know, we pass that road, we pass their house every day. And I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but at least in the past 2 years, I've almost hit their dogs numerous times. In fact, after she was bitten, my other daughter came home and almost hit their dog. So after this incident had occurred, the dogs have gotten out of the electric fence. And it's typically one that has the blue bandana on. But at the end of the day, if I owned a dog that bit somebody, that dog's not going to be outside with an electric fence that it's already proven it can breach. And anybody who has studied electric fences, any dog that wants to get out is going to get out, period. And when you have a dog with an electric fence, the shock actually can teach them learned aggression. So when they see that stimuli and they're getting shocked by it, it can make it worse and worse. There's numerous studies why this doesn't work. And there's particular breeds it doesn't work with. So it'll never happen to us again because we'll never walk by their house again. But there are children who are at hip height. And I just don't want something like that to happen.
You're saying hip height, meaning to you? Hip height?
Yeah, like in a dog space.
Everybody.
Okay, so just so we understand, you were coming down the road, you were on the sides closest, it really doesn't matter what side of the road you were on. The dog came off of the property and bit you. Did it chase you across the road? you
It
said?
chased and continued to attempt to bite me.
Okay, as you crossed the road?
Yes.
To get to the other side. After it had bitten you or grabbed you the third time, did it turn around and go back on its own? Did somebody call for
Yeah,
it?
so I was screaming, obviously, and they then heard the screaming and called their dogs because I think they assumed that that's what was happening. So yes, the dogs were called back and it didn't stop chasing after me and attacking me until it was called.
This will help us for the determination, the puncture wound that you suffered.
Mhm.
It's hard to ask this question, but how deep was it?
I would say it was bleeding. It wasn't bleeding much, but it most certainly was bleeding. When I went to the hospital, they put me on an antibiotic for it. I would say it definitely went past the top layer of my skin. I would not say it was a half tooth deep.
Okay.
I only have 2 photos in this report, and I see you've got a handful there.
Yeah.
What all areas were you actually?
This is just kind of the progression of how it looked like the first night and then a couple days later with more severe, obviously, as bruises change and stuff.
And she still has pain from her wrist.
I have,
And she can feel scar tissue where she had her puncture wound.
so it's not completely healed and it's been a couple weeks now.
So the arm or wrist is the puncture wound, is there any puncturing to the thigh area?
To the thigh, it was like a scrape.
Okay.
It was,
I think there was like a dot where blood came to the surface, but didn't actually.
I'm getting a significant amount of bruising.
Yeah.
So that actual one.
yes.
You can see the teeth marks across the top.
Right. Any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, so now we'll go into time of discussion with the commission.
Hey,
Oh,
said that-
sorry, thank you. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, sir, yeah.
That someone has to speak, someone else, you know, after the fact.
About the
You know,
specific instance?
Right, we would have did more than half of, if I'd be offered to take her, have it checked out. But evidently,
That's actually not part of the consideration.
okay,
As far as what we're concerned is what happened between the dog and the jogger. Once they were separated, that ends, right? Our jurisdiction.
Whenever I heard it, I jumped out of the truck and yelled. She was still standing. She said the dog chased her into the woods. But the
No,
other
she
side,
said across the street.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. She was standing on our side of the road and I ran around the truck.
To be clear, what's most important to us is where the incident occurred, whether did she come onto your property? Was she trespassing?
I cannot
Or was
really-
she-
I
or
cannot
was she
tell
in
you
public? Okay, that was the first question we have to answer. And then, what injuries occurred to her
that. Right.
by the dog? That's basically it. You know,
Okay.
whether it was
So
across the
then
street, in the woods.
So.
Yeah, right.
Right, and it's-
But
you're
are they
having
not-
still-
Are they not
be still.
responsible also if they have seen so many said things about this dog?
No.
that-
Not on
About it
our
personally,
road.
it's about her.
It's a public road. Think about that. Would you could know pulling out of somewhere, people have gotten hit 4 times, but if you go down there, you still make the assumption you're gonna be okay going down
True.
there. Okay.
All right,
There's one thing I want to clarify before going discussion here. Before we move on, I want to make certain what is on the table to be considered. Because the the paperwork that I have from the AMO is potentially dangerous is the only citation, the only categorization that's been selected. But in the minutes, it's both potentially dangerous and
On the agenda.
dangerous on the agenda. So so what's on the table? Are we to consider both or just one?
We should consider which one applies in the situation,
Okay.
based on other
Okay,
that we've gotten from county legal, we can.
So essentially,
Blue.
they've checked the box here
Yep.
next to both. ones.
Yep.
So just the highlighting is, okay. That makes sense. So both are on the table. Okay.
Whether they both apply is where we
Right.
have discussion, or neither.
But we're not being asked to consider vicious. We're not being asked to consider habitual offender. We're being asked to consider potentially dangerous or dangerous.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So. I want to start by talking about the more severe of the two declarations, dangerous. For a dangerous declaration, it has to happen off the property animal's owner, has to cause essentially egregious injuries to a person. Or if it was an unjustified attack, it has to have at least one deep puncture. Or leading to the death of a pet or livestock. So,
based on the information and based on the definitions, dangerous to me does not qualify at all.
I agree. I think the lack of a deep puncture probably
Right.
dismisses that. So then we'll talk.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I was just saying, so next step would be to look, does it fit with potentially dangerous?
And then for that to happen, it needs to be an unjustified attack. And if a person is the victim, then either we have punctures deeper than half a canine, or I was actually looking at the wording here, because it seems wrong, the way this is written, that the flow chart is showing if there are little to no bruisings or abrasions, then it is potentially dangerous. I think the implication is if there is
Yes,
bruisings or abrasions, then we consider dangerous.
Yeah, it's the wording's confusion. If you look at like in Dunbar bite scale, when it comes to dangerous dogs, if you have a puncture with bruising and abrasions, that's a more substantial bite than just the puncture.
Okay.
There's more pressure tearing that's going on when that bite contacts. So that would be a more dangerous injury. Here we have a bite with significant bruising, but not much puncture.
Mhm.
And the bruising is not at the bite site?
It's at the bite.
At the bite site, okay.
There is some, like a scrape as it was described. So there is some puncture, and then on the wrist, there's not much bruising, but there's a distinct puncture. Does that help?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It also, the bruising also, I mean, I'm just a vet, but I just know like how bruising works in animals, but depends on the tissue. So certain types of tissue will bruise more than other types of tissue. For example, in a fire.
Let's see that.
That's helpful.
So just so we all also understand what would be options that would come up if we were to declare potentially dangerous, because I think we've all determined we cannot declare it dangerous. But if we were to declare potentially dangerous, the requirements for that are that must be kept indoors or in a secure outdoor enclosure from which the animal cannot escape. Must be leashed at any time when it's not off property, not more than 6 feet. The leash must be under the control of an adult when off property. It must be microchipped, and that's it.
So the only requirement, if found potentially dangerous, would be, since the dog's already microchipped, it would be if the dog is taken off property, it would have to be on a leash. Just walking around, hey, come, verbal command. And when on the property, it's either inside, or if it's outside on property, it has to be in an enclosure. Invisible fence would apply, but an enclosure would. So. Are there any questions about the definitions?
So the biggest challenge at this point in time is the invisible fence.
Um, So, I mean, this is a time where we can entertain an emotion of whether to declare the dog potentially dangerous or not, and then we can go into discussion if there's anything additional we need to add.
Before we do that, I do need to ask, since I'm on the town council and I do Mr. Hopp's payroll,
You should recuse
I
yourself.
do think I should recuse myself
Yeah.
from this rule.
If you can get
That's fair.
when we get
Right. But I just wanted to give you guys a reason why I was abstaining.
Thank you for pointing us out.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I've got it. It's been off once, but didn't bite anybody. It's been off again, but we have no record of it. But somebody said it was, correct?
You have to disregard that.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure. So that one's out. So it's been off once, didn't bite anyone, and then it was off again, and it did bite.
Yeah, and just to be sure, because we've both been on the commission for a long time, we don't have any tests for habitualness for the dog's behavior. It's whether this incident, if it's a tiebreaker, the history of the dog, if you're not quite sure, then that's fair game. But as far as whether this incident, whether the dog rises to be declared potentially dangerous should primarily be based on the evidence of this incident, in my opinion.
Can I ask you a question as far as your invisible fence?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I know you said it was on the highest setting. Is there,
The one we bought and put on now does not have a setting. It's preset from them at the highest setting. And I put another one on since the incident.
He has 2 shot
I got 2 calls on it at this point.
and has there been any thought to move the line back closer to the house?
I can, I mean,
We can go downstairs and there is.
Because is it a hardwired one or the,
it's a hard wire.
Okay.
I put it all in.
so the question would be, have you ever thought about bringing it closer to the house, which creates a
But
longer distance
The
to the road?
control that we have will vary. You can set it where it's like 2 feet.
Right.
Or you can turn it where it's like, I got it like at 6 feet or so,
Mhm.
but, or it can go like 8 feet or up to 10, evidently. I mean, otherwise, I reckon I could dig it up and move it back closer to the house. You know, be the only other alternative.
I say that as someone who has an invisible fence, and I have moved mine further back from the road. One, for the safety of my dogs, but 2, because I have people who also walk, and it just keeps the distraction from being quite so obvious to them.
Valerie, just so I understand what you're saying, and I'm not overly familiar with them. It's a variable distance.
You can do that within the controls, but wherever the wire is, you can set it to, it can shock back accordingly. But I'm saying you can also take the wire, bring it back, and then that shock will occur.
That I understood the last part, because part of what I was asking. Thank you.
See, before the ordinance was changed, we recently, a few years ago, any dog that was declared anything, an invisible fence was not an acceptable solution. Okay, now we've taken that out of the ordinance, but we've replaced it with a secure enclosure requirement, which accomplishes the same thing. If we've got a dog that has demonstrated that the invisible fence, for whatever reason, whether the dog has become resistant to it, or maybe the power was out that day, or the batteries have worn out, or for whatever reason. It also doesn't prevent, well, it doesn't matter, obviously, it doesn't prevent things from coming into the yard and annoying the dog. That's the way we have it be on property, is an escape. That was a really horrible sentence. But what I'm trying to say
You
is,
should run for political office.
what I'm trying to say is, as recently as 2022, any declaration at all would have said it's an offense, no go. That's been taken out. However, the secure enclosure requirement that an animal cannot escape from has been added.
So I got one thing to say to that, and it's kind of irrelevant. Prisoners escape out of prison. you know, and they're in a secure enclosure.
True, there's just the difference of a 6-foot fence.
Well, I'm
Versus,
just saying, I mean, in an enclosure, anything can happen. But we talked about the batteries. I've got a meter sitting by the table. And we keep out 12 batteries, and if they get below what they're saying they're supposed to be, they're still good. I change the batteries. We go through batteries quite often just to be safe for this. And we keep the dogs neck shaved, so it don't have to go through all the fur. And I did put an extra collar on him right after this is.
And part of it's just a constant training too, even though they know it. It's constantly training them again to understand where the boundary is.
Can I ask a question? Do you acknowledge your dog breached the
Oh,
electric fence?
one of the rules we had before.
You can't talk to each other.
You
Well,
can
no,
ask
talk
me.
to us.
I'm fine.
Okay. That's fine. Let's bring it back to the commission discussion. We still haven't made a motion on what's going on and where to go from here. We've had some discussion about this not being potentially being dangerous. So are we going to consider this dog potentially dangerous?
I'll make a motion based on the location of the attack, the puncture, bruise, the abrasions, that the dog be declared potentially dangerous.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
So
We have a second. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? And any abstentions? One abstention. All right. So that motion carries.
I'm taking the abstention.
Oh, here's 2 abstentions. Okay. So we have set requirements in the ordinance. We also have the ability to attach any and all reasonable conditions to our decision. So do we want to make any clarifications on how the animal is kept?
Do they seem to be getting immune to the invisible fence normal times or?
I wouldn't say that. She did make a comment about driving by. People stop out by our house at the end of the property, like not the dog fence, but our property. And they rev them up and take off, go by the house. The dogs chase in our property.
They run parallel.
They run parallel with it. Now, I haven't seen them chasing a vehicle or run out. Personally, I have not seen them.
Me neither.
And I got a bunch of buddies that live out through there. I've asked them before, if you've seen the dogs out, and they said, no. I don't, when I'm not outside, I couldn't tell you. I mean, they may chase every car that goes by when I walk back in the house.
No,
I don't know. But
they chase mainly the trucks that sit there and rev the engine or that comes by the house really
I
fast.
don't know if they
They
chase,
just like racing.
I don't know if they go after UPS trucks or if they go after Amazon or anything like that. I don't know.
I have been there when Amazon has come to the door. The mailmen's came to our door. All the other FedEx, and they've done that.
Okay, thank you
Easy
for that.
delivery.
All right, thank you for that. If we don't have a motion, it would just be, the animal must be kept indoors or secured in an enclosure for which the animal cannot escape, which would then leave it up to the animal control officers
To determine.
to determine.
And if the dog did escape from its current enclosure,
And if the dog were to escape, then that would open up the owners to be considered habitual offender, which could then lead to the animal's removal from your care.
I don't know. Baby, go.
so.
I mean,
So dogs are considered, Indiana is a very strong property rights state. Your dog cannot be taken away from you without due process. It's just like your car can't be taken away from you without due process. But in exchange for this dog being my property, anything the dog does is my responsibility, anything at all. Okay, and we're not saying you're responsible, but this incident did happen on your watch. And if we were to just look the other way, it's not going to happen again, then we're not doing our job to protect the citizens of Monroe County. So we have to have as, I don't want to say ironclad, because nothing's ironclad. We need very strong assurances that the dog will not have this sort of interaction with anybody ever again. So, while invisible fence may work most, if not almost all of the time, We've
There
already
may
had-
be a better alternative.
yeah, we've already had an instant where it didn't work, and the remedies, the beefing up of the invisible fence. I don't believe, you've got an invisible fence, I don't have an invisible fence, but I don't, in my personal opinion, as just a regular Joe, I don't believe an invisible fence is a good solution for keeping my dog safe from the world and keeping the world safe from my dog. A predator can come into my yard, the fence isn't gonna stop a predator. But a physical fence might, and my dog, if the dog is obeying the fence, the dog is now trapped. If I've got a small dog, the dog is now trapped where a larger loose dog has come into the yard to attack. And so I know it's aesthetically pleasing and it's cosmetic and all that stuff, but it's not a solution I would choose. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying that you should choose another solution. Okay, but if I were to advise you, I would advise a different solution. Okay.
As
That's it.
someone who has one and who trains constantly on it, if I did continue to see my dog get out of it, I would switch my format. They're wonderful, but you have to be on it all the time.
I really don't have a problem with the dog at all. The dog's doing what my dog does. It's just the confinement of the dog. I don't want the dog coming out hurting anybody else. And I understand I've had two dogs that were more vicious than that dog. And I took care of them personally. And they didn't get out again. I had to take one, put her down. I had to take the other one, give it up, which was hard. It's because I had an invisible fence, but she kept getting out. So I had to take care of her. She ended up dying in here. But I don't want the dog getting out, hurting anybody. She already hurt her. There's two kids.
Okay,
across the
okay,
street.
we need to stop. Thank you for your input, but again, it's a discussion between the commission and you, so. Thank you for that. We do have the dog declared potentially dangerous. If there's no other motions of the table, we'll move on to our next agenda item. So the dog has been declared potentially dangerous. The animal control officer will be following up with you, to check on that and kind of walk you through the next steps. If you have any questions, please get a hold of them. All right? Thank you all. So we'll move to our next item on the agenda.
I know.
That you're waiting by. So the next item on the agenda is the request to declare potentially dangerous and dangerous Denison. The request has also been to consider official offender due to the violations. So kind of start with the dogs versus the officer in charge of this investigation here.
So that's Sarah, who's currently out there right now.
Okay.
So he's not here. There is objection to, they just read off the report on it, or?
That's fine.
So it's already in the record. So
For the record, yeah.
So having read it.
Jason, you mind just go through.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
Or just hit the, are you familiar enough with the case of the main?
I have no idea.
It's a full thing there, so just scroll through it.
I will read his report verbatim because I have no idea what's going on. If that's what you want me to do.
Like, I'm more familiar with how that reporting system is, you kind of find which paragraph is the overall summary.
Looks like stuff from let's see. It looks like the call was received on the 27th, 6/27/24. Says here, I'll refer to Officer Sarah in third person, I guess. Officer Sarah took a report from John Hayes. Stated that earlier today, assuming the 27th. One of his calves were attacked by a pit bull from a few houses down. He advised the pit bull lived at 8617 West Hines Road. John stated that he was notified by a neighbor earlier in the day that there were pit bulls in his barn, facing down his calves. And that a black male and white female, and a child had come down and collected the pit bulls from the barn. John stated that he went down to the barn tonight to feed the calves and discovered that one of them sustained injuries from the dog to its neck and mouth, causing it to be unable to eat. Fear that the calf may not make it. Let's see. Requesting something be done with the pit bulls have attacked neighbors' animals in the past. Was able to see that other AMOs had responded to the 8617 address in the past for animal complaints, but was unable to find contact information for anyone that lived at the address. I'm sorry, guys, this is all,
That's fine.
That's fine.
it comes from two different reporting systems into one, so.
So John Hayes made,
John Hayes is the calf owner, from what I understand.
okay,
And I'm trying to find owners of the pit bulls in the report.
okay. And then he had a prior incident on his property where the pit bulls took off a cat's face. Is that correct?
Okay, I'm not showing that report here. It looks like this is just the report for this calf incident.
So the owners are Mike and Haley Denson,
Okay.
DNSO.
That's what.
Then this says something here, Jordan Campbell wants to report pit bulls at this address. They have been in the CP's yard and believe they're dangerous and is afraid they will attack him. Stated that the dogs went to Mr. Hayes' property and tore the face off of one of their cats. Okay, so there's the cat one. And that was the day after, no, that was a month after, day after. So 6/28/24, 9:52 p.m. is when it was put into our other system for his call to the address about cats, the one that you mentioned with the same pit bulls, it appears. Let's see, it says he spoke with all parties involved with this instance. Denson, you said, right, was the owner of the pit bulls? Okay. Accepting responsibility if there's proof. Say this was the first time they were out 10 months. The 10-month-old got out. Okay, so there's more than one.
That looks like there were prior,
Says here, Mr. Denson continuously making improvements on the property.
Yeah, the officer,
And then it says he received video from Hayes property. Hayes said then he received property, I'm assuming email, and then went to the Hayes property to view clearer video. He states here, you can see Mr. and Mrs. Denson retrieving 2 dogs from Mr. and Mrs. Hayes' property. I think that's the best I can do for you, trying to piece it together.
Sure.
And not knowing the situation.
All right, appreciate it.
thanks, sir.
So we have the written reports of the history of this case here. Is Mike or Haley Denson here? I didn't see that they signed it. And Stacy and John, you're here. You own the house in question, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to,
Oh, yes.
okay, if you'd want to come up.
Bring an extra chair with you.
that report didn't do justice.
That report really was sad because there's a lot of misinformation there. Our cattle have not been attacked twice. You can go ahead.
So the day in question, I don't know what all you see from, like, that we had given Officer Sarah, but my oldest, I brought pictures just so you can put a face with a name. This is Mason. He is our oldest. We have 2 other boys that live on this property. We have a daughter too, but she doesn't live there. Mason is nonverbal and he wears an ankle monitor just because he wonders. He loves animals. So he would walk towards something. And my boys, my older boys, would probably walk towards something to protect him. They were home that day and Mason was on the porch and I got a text from his service worker that there were 2 dogs in with the calves. You guys didn't see the video, did you?
We saw
Okay.
it, yes.
That went on for a really long time. And we feel so fortunate that there was not a human. They ripped Ollie's tongue off.
Yeah, we saw
His
that.
ears. And I know, I heard you the first time about this incident. There are several previous reports on this family with these dogs. They did put a fence up. That fence did not work because they got out. They were driving, looking, they were on our property for a good 40 minutes before it was discovered. And we feel very strongly, saying dangerous, potentially dangerous does not do justice for these dogs. Especially since it's not even the first time. I don't even know if it's the same dog, but those dogs are mean and they're dangerous. They terrorize our neighborhood. People kind of the same, joggers, walkers, they stop at our drive now and they don't go up. My boys have been chased by those dogs. We didn't know about it until later, but these dogs with enclosures get out. They got out. And
They're breeding the pit bulls and they take,
that's what we've heard. We don't
they
know.
they told an officer the last time they will pay any fine they want because they get $5,000 a dog.
So we would like for them to be removed. These people have no business owning dogs, at least not the kind of dogs that they are having on their property.
There's 5 acres between us and them. Well, I get upset because yes.
They came onto our property, into our barn, into our barnyard, and you can't see it very well, but they tortured Ollie. They did, and I don't even know what, they drug him all over, and that could have been a human. I mean, not that our calves aren't important too, but that was beyond vicious.
Well, but Mason goes in the pen with the calves.
And so this was both dogs?
There were 2 dogs. Yes. There were 2 dogs and on the video, the thing is you can see the dogs, but our security, it's grainy. It's not, so he could even say, oh, it wasn't this dog, but a gray pit bull is a gray pit bull, whether it's this one or this one. We don't know what dog it is.
We didn't feel like asking our ABA therapist to come with us, but he's the one that identified the gray pit bull.
And they came
So
down.
there were two gray,
Yes.
gray and white. or
And they
just-
came down and said, oh, I think our dogs are playing with your calves.
Well, they didn't even talk to us. They pulled at the end of the road, pulled the dog, he ran across the hayfield. They lifted him up over the fence and put him in the car.
One of them, and the other one went by our house following the
She
owner
went,
home.
the lady came
With no
down
leash.
without even asking. Went down the drive and in the barn and came out with a pit bull on the camera without a leash, and the dog ran up by the front porch for Mason in the therapist shop.
Very nonchalantly.
They didn't really care.
So it's been an issue, and it's an issue for me when I don't feel safe in my yard, in my home, and they have a fence, and that fence is the equivalent to the fence that I have around my garden.
I think you guys, the board had at one point told them to put up a fence and it looks like chicken wire.
Yeah, the
So-
dogs, two of the dogs were declared potentially, we had different classifications 2 years ago, but last May, they were declared potentially dangerous too.
Yeah.
And they had to have a secure outdoor enclosure
Well,
was the rule.
they got out.
Clearly, yeah. All right, so.
Any other questions?
No, not now.
Thank you for that. And put a little extra of what happened. We appreciate
We
it.
do appreciate it.
We'll now look at, the reports and have discussion on the dog. You're welcome to, yeah.
Thank you.
Have a feedback. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Is there anybody else here? Don't think so. For this case? All right.
So we're being asked to consider potentially dangerous or vicious.
It's just we can't because it's not a human.
Right, the victim was a domestic pet or
Right.
livestock.
So the-
This is reserved only for attacks on humans,
Yeah.
so.
So the
vicious is
strongest we
off the
can go is dangerous.
table. And the dogs in question, Loki, not Loki, pardon, wrong. We have.
Pato and Nava are the two that are attached to the universe.
So based on just the way our matrix goes, because the injury was severe
Mhm.
to the livestock, that it pushes itself to severe is considered any physical injury that results in multiple bites, broken bones, muscle tears, or disfiguring lacerations, or requires multiple surgeries or corrective cosmetic surgery, which Dr. Kinnick has said that it will survive, but it will have difficulty eating because it has
4 inches of
its tongue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna just up.
4 inches?
I was gonna throw on the.
4 inches.
Right.
We don't know if he's ever gonna eat hay on his own, so it'll have to be in the barn. All right. Probably for another year.
So I would call this an unjustified attack causing severe injury to two domestic livestock. I would think a 4-inch amputation of a tongue qualifies as severe injury. And it did not happen on the dog owner's property. The calf did not invade the dog's property. The dog came on and got the calf on the calf owner's property.
So I would make a motion to declare potentially dangerous.
Second.
Potentially or dangerous?
Fully dangerous.
Oh, fully dangerous, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, dangerous. Yes, dangerous.
Second.
So we have a motion to declare the dog dangerous.
Dogs.
Dogs, sorry, thank you. The dogs.
Would we need a separate motion for habitual also?
Well, yeah, we'll
That's a
we'll do that.
Okay,
Um. Sorry, I was.
Fazo
Thank you.
and Navah, Nabah.
And then we had a second as well. All right. So motion a second, all in favor, simply by saying aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. So the dogs Fazo and Nava are declared dangerous.
So the outdoor enclosure must be approved by an AMO. So that's the first short-term thing that will happen. If the dogs are being kept in the chicken wire or something, that those days are over.
So yeah, so must be kept indoors or in a secure enclosure from which animal cannot escape, in which children cannot trespass. And it can't be used until the animal management officer approves that enclosure. If off property has to be on a 6-foot leash and wearing a muzzle. The dogs have to be implanted with a microchip and spayed and neutered or neutered. And there must be clear warning signs on the property of the dangerous dog. All right. So because this isn't the first time that these dogs have been off dog and the dogs were seriously declared and they weren't keeping them properly confined, we've been asked to declare the dentists habitual offenders per the ordinance as well.
Yep, Sheriff Department's asked us to consider habitual offender, and definition that satisfies that is an owner is a habitual offender if they've been found to violate any provision of this chapter 3 times in the last 2 years, or if the owner of an animal which has been previously declared fails to comply with the terms and conditions required by the chapter. The dogs were previously declared potentially dangerous too, and the requirement of PD2 at that time was must be kept indoors or in a secure enclosure. I would opine that the neighbor's barn is not in a secure enclosure, and therefore that the owners have not complied with the requirements and have failed to comply with the terms set forth back in 2023, and therefore are textbook habitual offenders.
Is that a motion or you?
So I make a motion, I mean, as you guys want to talk about, I move that these are the examples of habitual offenders in Monroe County.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Valerie?
I feel the need to point out that I believe the incidences that we're reviewing for to classify as habitual, I was directly involved with them at the time, so I wouldn't want this to be
Okay.
construed as a conflict of interest, so
So abstain.
I will stay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right,
Can I ask a question?
No, hold
Oh,
just a second.
so we have a motion and a second on the table. So all those in favor of declaring, I lost the name.
Cosner and Nava.
No, the owners.
Oh, okay, can't, you're right. Yeah,
We don't,
Yeah.
we declare the owners habitual offenders, not the dogs.
One point I want to make, the names, I believe the names changed since last year because we've got Mike and Haley Denson as the owners now. But back when they were originally declared to be owners of a PD2 dog, their names were Mike McCoy and Haley Denson. So I would add Mr. Denson's name is McCoy, that he's, so Mike, yeah. However we word the declaration.
So,
Want to make certain that that gentleman is included.
all right,
is that the same person?
so we believe it is the same person, yeah. So the owners will, so the motion, so do you want to rephrase your
Yeah,
motion?
my motion is to declare Haley Denson and her husband Mike habitual offenders.
Wait, they might not be married.
Haley Denson and her co-owner,
Okay, I mean,
you're right. And her co-owner Mike, believed to be named Denson, but possibly McCoy, as habitual offenders per Monroe County Animal Ordinance Code 440-20.
So a motion and a second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstention, one abstention. All right, so they have been declared. Now in declaring an owner a habitual offender, we can choose to fine the owner twice the amount of the applicable penalty for Class D ordinance violation. Require the owner to take steps to rectify the problem that caused the declaration. We can choose to void the owner's ownership of the relevant animals.
I would make that motion.
All right,
Ownership be void of both animals.
so we have a motion on the table to void the ownership of both animals. We have a second.
second.
We have a second. So a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just needed a little more information on if they lose ownership, exactly what that means. They come here to the pound,
You can go to the animal shelter.
okay, animal shelter, and then the animal
Depends.
shelter tries to adopt them if they're adopted.
And if not, they would.
Right,
The way their motion is, it's in motion, so I can't.
So,
I'm sorry.
no, so there's a motion, and we had one abstention, correct, on this motion as well? So that motion carries.
I would like to also move that the owners be prohibited from acquiring any new animals for a period of 3 years.
All right, so there's a motion.
Mandatory spay neuter.
Would you like to amend the?
I will.
I didn't hear
Let's
that, so we got.
let's get a second and then we'll amend it.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to prohibit the owners from acquiring any new animals for a period a period of 3 years. We have a second on that motion.
I think we have an amendment.
Do we have a,
Proposed amendment.
okay,
I have a proposed amendment that the remaining animals in the care of this couple be required to be mandatory spay and neuter.
Can we do that to
What
the,
about dogs, and kitty cats and gerbils and parakeets?
Okay,
and
we can do
goldfish?
dogs,
Okay, dogs.
the remaining dogs in their care be required to be spayed or neutered.
I'm checking that. Can I amend it?
Okay.
Can you-
Let's, we're getting a little
Yeah.
bit crazy here, so let's,
How about we have
Let's start
discussion?
with the
Can we have some
original.
discussion?
let's
for
have some, well, let's roll back to the original, just to, yes, are you gonna withdraw your
I was a
motion?
parliamentarian, allow me. I
Yes.
make a motion that we suspend the previous declaration for further discussion of amendments. Is there a second?
Yes.
There's a second.
All right, there's a motion and a second, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, so just, I was a college parliamentarian, what we've done is, the thing that we just passed has been, it's still passed, but we're opening it up for further discussion in case we did something wrong or to amend it, we'll have to vote on it again at the end. Okay, so it's, yeah.
So what would you like to go for? I would like to see if we're taking these two away from them, because obviously we know they're the culprits. But we know that there are additional situations and they have not proven themselves to be good owners of any other dog. So that, in that case, I look at it as not to take away their other dogs that they have, but that they'd be required to be spayed and neutered.
And that they not be allowed to acquire any.
Any other dogs outside of what they currently have for 3 more years.
And can they please have a welfare check on their current pet? Sorry, is that, I don't know if that's too much or is that a standard procedure?
No, we can do that. We can add that in.
I don't know what the percentage of it is.
So if I could summarize, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
What we're leading to is a prohibit the owners from acquiring any new animals for 3 years, that all currently owned dogs be spayed or neutered, that the 2 dogs in question, they be surrendered, and that a welfare check of the remaining animals under their care take place within 21 days, 30 days?
What's
Whatever.
What's
they can
viable?
manage, I guess.
30 days that you check it?
Whatever you tell us to do.
Well,
Hey, 15, do it now.
tomorrow.
15.
15 days?
If they can do that. I think there's-
Is that the time of relinquish?
Well, they, yeah,
What's that?
they have to be notified.
So-
how long that gonna take?
We get,
That's a good
we
point.
get 14 days for notification, like from county legal to
That's what I'm
people
talking
for
about.
these
Okay.
meetings. So
So,
I would use that as a basis.
So 30 days is probably reasonable because they'll be.
That's what I
within,
was
say
saying.
within, if we do it within 30 days,
Yes.
then if they would provide notice that they are declared and then you surrender the dogs, then we can follow up earlier if possible.
So I'll make a motion to amend the previous declaration as follows. That all dogs, other than the 2 that are to be removed, that are possessed by the couple, are to be spayed or neutered. That no new animals be acquired for 3 years. That a welfare check take place within 30 days. Period. I make that motion.
All right, so we have a motion to amend
The
the
declaration.
previous declaration. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. We have a couple seconds. Okay, we have a second. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. All right. So that motion carries. All right.
I think we have a question from the floor.
I think you answered it. I was gonna ask about microchipping, or what if they say that these are the 2 dogs, but it's not really those 2 dogs? How do we ascertain?
It's kind of a blanket we've thrown on their whole family, that any animal they have, if it's dog, has to be neutered. These 2 dogs have to be removed. And a welfare check, and no more, which will be enforced by the AMOs. They'll just randomly, surprise, come in and count animals and see if they've got no more than. That's it, yeah.
So if they have more than these 2 dogs and they're coming and there's violations, contact county immediately.
Oh, we will.
I appreciate it.
It's gonna take a while because all this stuff has to be recorded. County legal has to notify them formally, certified mail and all that stuff. And I can't speak to the character of the owners. They might move the dogs in a shell game sort of thing. I don't know. They might, so it might take a while to track them down. Or maybe not. Maybe they comply right up and surrender everything. But it's gonna be a little delay in the startup of the application of this. Yeah. So,
Now, the video showed them leaving and going away from their home, and there's no dogs up there.
so
Not surprised.
thank you all for your patience, both of these. This was tough. So,
Just clarification on our side. One person said surrendered, one person said removed. So are we gonna put the burden for surrender on them? Because if we say removed, that means we're going to get them.
right.
If they're forced to be surrendered, they'll have to do that on their own within the time period. But if they're being removed, we'll have to have them removed within that time period.
So we are removing their ownership.
We voided their ownership.
So their ownership of those animals are void. So whether they surrender them to us and you are having them go through that process, or you need to get a warrant to see that either one of those can happen.
Okay.
Yeah, those dogs are no longer considered property.
And that has to occur within the 14 days from.
When they get the notification. Right.
My guess is there'll be a legal case with it, so.
Absolutely.
All right. So that ends our new business and it's time to move into our reports.
So one more question, should we want to take it now, or?
Just, I overheard in there about a muzzle on the dogs.
Yeah,
That's, I'm asking, can we put a muzzle on our dog until we get a fence built? Or
Yes.
something done, and still let him be out?
Yes,
I mean,
you have a muzzle on them when they're out. That's like a double contact.
Follow up with the officer on that, on any kind of changes.
That would be until you can build a fence or anything.
yeah,
You're not required to muzzle, you're not declared dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, I mean.
But that could be a great
But that could work.
neighbor.
But if it will help out,
Yes.
I'm more than willing to put a muzzle.
You got
Well, I can put a muzzle on both of them, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For right now.
All
But
right.
I overheard the muzzle part, and that's my concern.
Yes. Yeah, so we didn't require it in your case, but, yeah, certainly discuss that with the officer.
And to show you're going above and beyond what we.
Yeah, and it would show then if anything else happens, you went above and beyond.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so enter new business, time for our reports. Animal shelter, so that would be me. Animal shelter continues to operate, at or above capacity. We did have an amazing adoption, week and weekend, which has helped out immensely with that. But summer is just a really busy time for us. We are continuing for the next week at least with reduced dog adoptions. We've been doing that for the last month, and then also feed wave the dog cats and help with them going out the door.
Okay. The one thing I was gonna say, kudos to Emily. There was a tough, someone made a comment on one of the lost and founds that if you take them to the shelter, they're gonna be automatically euthanized, and she did a really nice job of trying to explain how this works. And even though it kept it through the thread coming back up and back up and back up, it was very nice. She never seemed to lose her patience in her responses to it, but just kept reiterating what the policies were. So kudos to her for
Good. Thank you for that. It's definitely a hard thing for staff to kind of navigate very difficult and confusing reality of the shelter, especially shelter in the summer months where we are continuously overcrowded and we lose options quickly. Right. Officers. We have at least one new business for the officers. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am the new animal management officer. I started at the beginning of July. So I am currently being trained by Officer Williams and Officer Sarah. My name is Lauren Hamilton.
Nice to meet you, Lauren.
So as of right now, I'm still training, learning, but we'll see where we go from here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from Officers, Sheriff Department, Legal? Do you have any reports or anything for us?
I do. Can everyone hear me? Just wanted to let you know, this one sort of escaped me. It did an in round from the commissioners to Dave, took care of this, but there's going to be a amendment to the ordinance that's presented this Wednesday in front of the Board of Commissioners. I can read the entire text to you, but to make it sort of summarize, let me pull it up here. There's going to be a change to, there's a proposed change to the animal exhibition definition, which just basically says that animal exhibition is banned unless it's otherwise defined. And then we add two definitions, one of a horse show and one of a dog show. Horse show says a horse show is a judged exhibition of horses and or ponies, typically consisting of a series of different performances called classes, wherein a group of horses with similar training or characteristics compete against one another. Dog show is defined as a judged dog exhibition or competition, typically consisting of conformity and or dog sporting events such as agility, disc dog, obedience, herding. And those would each have a $100 per show fee. But basically, it just allows animal exhibitions if they're a horse show or a dog show. Still prevents pig wrestling and anything like that. But that's going to be on the agenda for Wednesday if anybody has any interest. But just want to put that on everybody's radar.
So they are, so that's going to also prohibit zoo, I was going to say zoos, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Circuses from coming into the county.
You broke up there for a second, Virgil.
So they are prohibiting any kind of animal exhibition. So one of the things that falls on an animal exhibition would be like a circus coming through. This would
So the
Yeah, so they would be banned. The only thing is horse and dog.
What about the?
well, circus is
There's an exhibition of rabbits, pigeons, everything else, so.
hold on. So what it actually says is, it says animal exhibition means any spectacle, display, act, or event not otherwise defined. So if it's defined in the code, then it's allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically adding those two definitions.
Essentially it makes it more clear that there are no animal exhibitions unless they're defined in the code. Circus is defined, horse shows defined, dog shows defined. There may be a few more, but basically it's creating exceptions. It's just clarifying the exceptions, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah.
Would it be appropriate, Justin, would it be appropriate for me to applaud the county commission for taking such an active role in the animal management code? Because this is the third amendment that they have considered and are possibly going to be passing in this year. And I know that they've been efficient in the past, but they've been super efficient in the present. And I'm impressed. So if it matters, Ken Buzzard says, good job, county commission.
I will let them know. I think that when you, as you all know on the board here, when you serve on boards, getting positive news is always good. Sometimes what you get is a lot of negative. So I will definitely pass that along.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion from the commission? If none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
No motion.
We got a motion on the table. We have a second?
Second.
A second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions. All right. Excellent. Thank you all.
Hi, Justin.